Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast, celebrating filmmaking, storytelling and cinema across the island of Ireland. And for today's episode, we're really delighted to welcome back actor, writer and filmmaker Hugh O'Conor, whose hilarious and heartfelt quasi-autobiographical comedy series Showkids is available to watch back on the RTE player now. So have a listen to the trailer.
Fear. I know a lot about fear. I was basically living in the clouds.
Something needs to be done.
So I tried.
Miss Jessop's Drama Academy.
Logic will take you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere.
You're an actor now, Sam. Don't let me down, Sam. You're a superstar. Ah!
You know what? I think I found my tribe.
So thanks so much for chatting with us, Hugh.
Thanks, Gemma. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great. It's you're back now. I think the last time we spoke was Metal Heart. And because
that's right.
Because it's so long, I really want to go back over everything. But first up, a huge congratulations on Showkids. It was just such good fun. And like even as an adult watching it, there's plenty to enjoy. The humour is really witty. I think it pokes such fun at the industry. And I would say there's a lot of lived experience in there from yourselves and Shane and Amy as well.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that was really our hope that it would play sort of for families together, so which is a kind of a challenge in its own way. But yeah, so thanks, Gemma. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And your 5-year-old, you were telling me.
Yeah. So we sat down. I sat down and watched it with him, and he really, really enjoyed it. And like all the elements of it, the pacing is good, the characterizations are good. The jokes are just consistent and so funny, which again, of course they are, considering yourself and the lovely team behind it. But the performances are great.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
But we'll delve into this. Sorry,
Okay,
I always get ahead of myself.
I love it.
Yeah. So anyone who's listening who maybe leaves before the end, just make sure to watch it. And it's one of the things, you're sitting down over Christmas, you've a bit of time with your kids. It's one that you can kind of stick on and you will be entertained, especially if you understand the film world, because there's a lot of people lampooned in it that probably won't recognise themselves, is there?
No comment. No
comment. Oh, fabulous. So first up, I was wondering, so you have had such a kind of strong career from acting to writing to directing then, and then projects that are your own as a writer that aren't your own through animation. I was wondering if you could just talk us through like your journey from the very, very beginning. How did you get into the industry?
Whoa. Well, because I'm getting quite old now. So yeah, it's a long time ago. I suppose it is kind of like Showkids, in a way that I went, my dad was he's a classical pianist, but he's sort of, when he was young, he was sent by his mum, who came, a working class family in Dublin, but wanted his mum wanted him to do sort of the arts as well and try stuff, even though she never wanted him to do the arts because that was a terrible thing to do. He was supposed to work in a bank.
It's not a real job.
It's not a real job. So he did do music, and I think he did speech and drama as well. And then music was the thing that worked for him. So then when he had myself and my brother, we did go for music lessons and for kind of speech and drama class, and then it stuck for me and it didn't for my brother, and the way that's something that we want to sort of talk about in the show as well. So because it's not about drama being for everybody or everybody wants to be an actor, it's more about what drama can do for you in terms of your own life and learning who you are, growing up. So that's kind of how I went to this class, and I liked it, and then I started getting put up for parts. So even when I was like 9, I suppose when I was 8, I got cast in Wurzel Gummidge, the 3rd series of Wurzel Gummidge.
And that was iconic, like for anyone sort of Gen X and millennial. Like it was one of those iconic shows that you just look back and the kind of that young person's era was wild. The thing
that's right. That was kind of young person's film TV as well, really, wasn't it? Wurzel Gummidge. I mean, it'll make no sense to anybody now, but it didn't even then.
So he was a scarecrow, and
scarecrow. Sean Pertwee. Yeah. They were going to film the 3rd series in Ireland. This is like the mid 80s, and I got cast as a kid, and they came in just before we were going to shoot, and they said, "We're really sorry, Hugh, but they're not going to make the show after all because of a union issue." And I was like, "What's a union?" And I was like 7, and I still didn't understand. They were like, "Well, it's not important right now, but just we're going to buy you a toy." And so that was it. So it never happened. But weirdly, then I got cast I probably wouldn't have been able to do it. That film Lamb, which was actually filmed in England with Liam Neeson. So that was the first thing I did. And then I kind of ended up getting cast in more stuff during my teens because once you've done one thing, and I still went to school and I didn't miss anything. But yeah, that's how I got started.
Wow. So and then talk me through it. So you're working kind of consistently as a child actor, like while you're going through school, or was it something that you'd dabble in here and there, or?
I kind of mostly just managed to do it on my summer holidays, I think, or that, like, I remember this film, I did probably a week and maybe took some time off, but it was a night shoot, so I remember. And then obviously My Left Foot, I don't remember how exactly that, I think I did get time off. I think the story actually went that I was denied, I was told I wouldn't be allowed to take time off, or maybe for something else. And so I think my mum just decided that I was having a 3-week asthma attack because I had asthma, and I just didn't come in. And then, yeah, because they were being a bit difficult about stuff. And then, of course, they were happy afterwards. It was all fine. So,
yeah. You've the cutout of the newspaper article with our beloved student Hugh of the year up on the notice board. I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, Catherine Rose in the show, we were there were always kind of kids in the class that we went to where you'd see that they were already acting in plays and they were in their teens. I remember Dervla Kerwin was in the class I went to, and she was a little bit a kind of a more mature student than me, and she was like the real star in our class. So that was really funny as well. Yeah.
So all the dynamics that end up in Showkids are sort of based on real life, which I really
absolutely
enjoy.
Absolutely.
Because it does feel like there's kind of kernels of truth to it as well. And tell me about, again, so how are you kind of managing this with going through school? Are you disinterested in your studies? Is this much more exciting? Are you able to balance both?
I still didn't think I was going to necessarily do it for a living, I don't think, and I think I maybe wanted to be a lawyer for a while. I don't know why, because I like LA law on TV. So I didn't really know, but I obviously was acting during my teens. So I looked at that as kind of like my summer job. But it just turned out to be something that I kind of slowly got into. And I did go to college, but I went to Trinity to do drama. But I was sort of still acting and stuff, in films sort of during the summer and things like that. So, but I wanted to do something to start making my own stuff. And actually a film I did when I was about 19, The Young Poisoner's Handbook, that was with a director called Ben Ross, and I really got on well with him. I'm still quite close with him in England, and my godfather to his daughter and stuff. But he was really into filmmaking, and he was talking about Scorsese, and I was talking about the Coen brothers. He's like, yeah, I can do better than that. I was like, really? You even know about them, and you're kind of trying to, but and so we kind of worked on that together, and that was really exciting because we're kind of making a film with shots that we talked about from Taxi Driver, and then we ended up, actually meeting Scorsese, and he was going to maybe work in a film that Ben was going to do at one point.
Tell me more about this meeting. That's very exciting. That's not like when you skip over on the way to talk about script development. It's
kind of a sad story because that was a film that nearly happened that he was going to be an executive producer on, and then film 4 were going through this big kind of crisis, and the film got pulled because it was hard to cast, and anyway, so. Yeah, it was just such a shame because it would have been great. But we met him at a screening of Cundon, and I think he was going through his own, with that. He was saying, they're saying it's too passive. It's about the Dalai Lama. It's too passive. It was a great joke. It was like, he was making, comedy of his own kind of difficult time. But but it was such a brilliant, brilliant to meet him, and so I would have kind of grown up more reading the directing books than the acting books, to be honest. Like, I read Scorsese and Scorsese. I remember going to work experience on the bus, and like that was kind of really my inspiration because I loved De Niro, but then I really loved the way Scorsese made films. That he drew pictures, and I would sort of draw little pictures and make short films during my teens on like a camcorder. And then edit them together.
Like edit together with the 2 tapes and
exactly.
The old school for anyone who's like, how did that even work?
I did school projects with that where I edited like stuff from Raging Bull together. I don't remember what this for, like The Young Scientist. Anyway, so I was really kind of passionate about making stuff. And then when Ben was a real inspiration to me because he was writing his own scripts. So I was like, maybe I could do that. And then so in Trinity, I did write a short play that I was in with my friend, and then I directed an Orson Welles play in my final year called Moby Dick Rehearsed in the Beckett Center, which is a big production, like an hour, and it was really exciting. So I still hadn't made any film stuff, but then I got a scholarship, a Fulbright, to go to NYU, and so I went for a year. in like my early 20s, and then made a very silly short there. Kind of like, everyone starts out where they will work on your film after you've like done boom operating on their short in Central Park or something, so that was like that was a winter and a great time just making shorts with other people in New York and going to great classes.
And are you still picking up roles here and there? Are you eligible to work in the States?
I wasn't really. I didn't really, because I was but then I actually, after the I went back to acting then after the it was like a special student status thing where I just went for like a year as a special student scholarship thing. So so after that, then I kind of kept acting, but I moved to England because I'd met a girl, and so it was then. But then I finally moved back to Ireland. That was really when I started making shorts. Was like 2008 or something. Then. And my friend Sean Butler was making shorts, and we were talking about maybe make. I think I'd acted in one that he had made, and then we wrote one together for a Screen Ireland short, or it was called the Film Board at the time.
And did you at this point as well? So you're kind of again learning theory from like such great places like Trinity, NYU, then you're putting that into practice. Did you get a kind of taste of the American industry while you were over there, and what could potentially be possible, or were your eyes at that point always set on, I'm just going to get my information and bring it back?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, suppose I did still think I was going to, well, it's kind of more just the way my life had gone. I was sort of settled in England for a good few years. And then actually when a relationship broke up, I kind of moved back to Ireland because I didn't love living in London. So, the States I still kind of go there quite a bit. My parents, and I'm kind of back and forth there quite a bit. But yeah, it was a really good experience, especially in NYU, because I think I learned so much from doing that and just practically making stuff, and literally taking a camera out and filming with your mates, which I still do. Do you know what I mean? And I remember going for an audition for something while I was there, as an actor, and I'm forgetting his name now, the great actor who was in Our Brother Were Art Thou, and he makes films now as well. He's kind of the goofy guy in Our Brother, of the three of them. Anyway, I'll remember his name. But I remember him saying, I said I was at NYU, and he said, "Are you doing film stills photography?" And I was like, "No, not really." He goes, "You should, if you're going to be a director," and he was an actor, he was like, "You should study still photography, because that's really, And I always had a camera myself, like just making, like I get them developed in pharmacies and stuff when I was there, I remember. So I always loved having a camera, but then a friend of mine got into, sorry, this is a waffly way of
No,
telling,
this is brilliant. Yeah.
But my friend Frank, who was in school with me, he started when eBay started, he started buying all film cameras and developing the film negative just in a bag. And I love the and he gave me like one of his old Yashica cameras. So I started shooting stuff on film and then developing it in a bag with chemicals and stuff. And it was messy, but it was fun, and you got a real sense of telling a story. The big thing with photography stills was telling a story in an image. You can tell a whole story in one image. So that kind of got me more into, like, it really waffling now, but there was a site called Flickr that I still use. And that we started putting stuff on that, and I started getting a little bit of like friends on that and attention from the Flickr blog at one point. The film stuff, like, they featured me. I was like, I like this. I'm getting kind of, this is a different thing. And it was kind of like filmmaking, but it's just with the camera, you go out and you shoot stuff yourself, and then you can have an effect with that. And it was really investigating finished product. Yeah, and with interesting friends who are, sometimes actors, sometimes not. I love just going to my mates, like, "Will you come and shoot with me?" And we'll just go wander. We don't know what's going to be, and sometimes it's not good, but you sometimes get something, and it's just one shot that you need. I think I only really want one shot from a shoot, because you're not doing it for anybody else. You're just doing it for you guys.
So do you write then as a sort of means and an end to create your own work? Do you see that as a kind of almost like a necessary evil to get to the final product?
It's sort of both. Like, I love writing, and I've written a bit for other people as well now, because I love making stuff. So it's like, it's a kind of depends on what the project is. So I think with photography, that kind of scratches that itch of just shooting and making stuff. And I shoot as well on a camera, like a 4K camera. I've got a gimbal, and I can kind of shoot myself and edit. I made a video last year with Michael Murphy for Dunica Dennehy, who's a great composer, and we just went out into Wicklow and just shot myself, and another friend of mine, Hugh Chandler, came and used his little drone at the end, and just the three of us. Like, you can just make a video now, with just you guys in one car, waiting. It's 5 a.m. in the shitting rain, going, "I really hope we're going to get the shot," because we'd come out 2 times before, and the weather had been so terrible. that we couldn't shoot. So that was our third time, up the mountains at 5 a.m. going, I really hope this is going to work.
Yeah. People be like, there's something dodgy going on up there.
I
What
know.
are these lads coming up
They're
again for?
supposed to be paying us for this. Exactly. I know. Anyway, but you know what I mean? So that's kind of, there's different forms that are great fun to do. And then like something with animation is different because that's such a long process. And that's not something I did a little during the pandemic. I was like the series director of a project for Irish National Opera called 20 Shots of Opera, which was amazing. And that I was suggested animation as a couple of them because it was originally Fergus Shield, who's the director of National Opera, was supposed to be doing an opera, and because of the pandemic they couldn't. So he had this money set aside and said he's commissioned 20 composers to make 20 short operas that we then filmed in the Gaiety. It's all online now, but and I worked with about 15 directors, and I made a couple of them myself. And I suggested animation for a couple of them. So I did direct one animation. I have technically directed one animated short, but that the animator of that, Holly, she pretty much directed it in a way. I gave her the shots and stuff, but she made it. But I've written animation for other people, which has been amazing.
And Worry World has done just so well.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
So
yeah.
tell me then about sort of the idea. Is it just that you're just a bag full of visual ideas and you're, waiting for the chance to pull things out?
I suppose it is. Yeah. I mean, I'd have a few different things on the go now, a few different projects and different, formats. So that's kind of fun. And that it sort of means that you're never frustrated when one isn't going, because you obviously are, but then you've got, hopefully, I always say to people, it's having a few balls in the air, because they're never going to all land at the same time, and you can't rely on just one thing going. So and I'm lucky that I can also act sometimes, and if something's really exciting, or if you, and I've gone for things that I don't get all the time as well, so that's kind of like the life of the actor. But it's great to have, not to be totally reliant on that. And I found that sometimes a little bit as an actor, that you are waiting all day and you're not getting to be creative. You know what I mean? And when you do, it's amazing. So it's like, that's the frustration. But then that, when you're working at a certain level, you can only do that way, because the project is so important and the pressure is so high, if you know what I mean. So then it doesn't matter,
Because you were in Small Town, Big Story then recently as
yes,
well.
yes.
So like, it's not like you're not getting big productions and working alongside it. Do you find, kind of working on things like that helps feedback into your own work as you're collaborating?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest exciting thing for me this year was I got to work on the Werner Herzog movie that was shooting. So that was, that was amazing. And he was incredible. And, he's a great example of like, someone who does a lot of different things. I think he's 82 now, and he has 3 different films. He had an animation, I think. He had a documentary about elephants coming out. He's going to do another documentary. He had 2 films already finished, recently, and then he's making this film that he had written and was directing. So, and I tried not to overly say how much, he was an inspiration to me, because I remember watching Aguirre Wrath of God on TV. I think in like the early 90s, staying up late to watch it, and just the first shot, if anyone's seen it, like the first shot is just so incredible. And it actually means there's something about that first shot that, like, he talks about it in his autobiography, but I mean, he could feel it when he was shooting it, that something was happening. It's just this incredible wide shot of, everybody climbing this mountain. I think it's in Machu Picchu, somewhere like that. And then, after 2 minutes, they're still just climbing. They're in, and then they appear at the front of the shot. They're climbing up more, and you can see that they're really doing it, and there's like loads of people out and he's made this film out of just sheer will, which he still does. And you have to have that, so you can't plan it that in a way. He did, but you sort of just, you watch what happens from that and wonder yourself, I'd say,
And as someone who's had very intensive and formal education from like some of the most reputable places going, do you find, again, art is an instinctive thing?
Yeah.
That it's something that like stems from the gut, or is it something that you'd, try and, process with your head, or how does that balance work?
You have to. I mean, you hope it does, and usually the favorite things that you have on are usually accidents or things that you didn't plan, because that's the magical kind of third element of, the plan and the reality coming together. Something else happens, and sometimes it's not good, but sometimes it's bigger than you thought, or better, and it's always going to be something different, so it's because I suppose the worst thing is to be working something that everyone is on their phone, and you can kind of tell that it's no one's heart is really in it. You know what I mean? Because that's where filmmaking has become like it's got to happen, but where things are just everyone's there for the gig rather than to be there to make something magical happen, or to find those kind of accidents, which you can't do when you're in the middle of a shoot that's really hard to do anyway, and you've got no time. I always say the biggest acting I do as a director is being a director. You're like, we're fine, there's loads of time, let's go again, and you can just see the AD going, we've got to go, so it's trying to find that balance, isn't it?
And how much of that balance is sort of like thinking versus and actually when you're writing, so that's something do you write in visuals and translate it into words? Do you, in terms of dialogue, can you hear people speak? Like, what is your process in terms of like getting the ideas onto a page?
God, I don't know. I suppose it's really, I always think everyone is different because I've been working with Shane Langan and Amy Stephenson on Showkids and a few other things, and they're brilliant. And it's so much fun to kind of throw ideas out to them because I don't always think I've got the best ideas either. So you always sometimes think it's good, and then you come back and you're like, no, it's terrible. But on your own, I don't know. It's sort of different every time. Yeah. And I would when I'm making stuff, I would shoot stuff and like do tests and edit it together. To kind of, if we're making stuff, it's quite easy these days to do that, and so that's fun, where you can kind of literally go and shoot stuff. I have something in develop at the moment, and to kind of get the development, I went out and shot a test thing that really helped, and that was really good to do, and you get a better sense of what the project is as well by doing that sometimes.
Yeah, but and just sort of to dig down, it's like, okay, so you're maybe the inspiration comes to you for an idea, right? Are you going in your mind, okay, I want to put forward an animation because I met this person, I really want to collaborate with them. What are the ideas that are out there? And then get flashes of images? Is it that you all of a sudden are kind of struck with something that would work really well, you're figuring it out logistically, and then you approach someone? Like, sort of what is
it'd
your
probably
process?
be sort of that second one where you get the idea and you're like, okay, that would probably be best as this, so then who would be right for that, kind of thing. And it's different every time, rather than wanting to pick the genre or whatever, because something like animation, it's going to take 5 years, so you're like, you have to really like the idea, but maybe it's the best thing for that, and animation is so brilliant. I don't know if you've seen Retirement Plan, Johnny Kelly's short. Oh my God, it's amazing. I just saw the news. It's shortlisted for the Oscars.
It's shortlisted for the Oscars. I know. I was going to share that today. That's so
Eru,
exciting.
I haven't seen Eru yet, which is great as well, it sounds. But Retirement Plan is just amazing,
And Worry World. So, like, in terms of writing for this, I'm very interested for someone, you'd worked in animation before for the opera project.
Yeah, and the Overcoat, actually, you remember the Overcoat? I did that as well, which was that was a big project. That was something that Giants did with an Estonian company. So that was huge. Actually, after doing the Overcoat, I kind of wanted to do something a little more kind of more grown up, maybe, or more kind of graphic novel in style, rather than because we did two different styles in that animation, which I'm really proud of. But Worry World was more kind of like this. It was, again, this kind of mad idea that what if your thoughts were visible? What if everybody could see your thoughts? Do you know what I mean? That would be kind of, not that they're terribly bad. It's just, it's embarrassing to have, as an introvert, extrovert, you're kind of, you sort of feel a little bit about that. And so I thought that could be an animation, because that's kind of the way you could do that really well. And we had some examples, and ended up working with Jessica Patterson and Shauna Cullen, the producer, and they were brilliant, so that was such an amazing process to go through. And it was hard, because the idea is very visual, and the idea was that there's no dialogue really, which then becomes incredibly difficult when you're doing animatics and it's not making sense, and you're going, why did I think this was a good idea? But you finally get there. And then something what's so interesting about Retirement Plan, because it's such a simple idea, do you know what I mean? But it's so brilliant and it's so profound. You need one idea that works really well, I suppose, in something like that in short form.
this again, you've kind of spanned all these things, and I looked up. Yeah, I looked at I totally had forgotten. I think I'd forgotten that was you've done so many things that there's like I'm like, oh yeah. So then tell me actually before we get to Showkids as well, which is just so warm and so funny. I really do want to talk about sort of Metal Heart now. That was some time ago now.
Yeah.
Like working on something so long form and directing it, were there kind of lessons then that you picked up along the way that informs like what you're working on now?
I mean, everything does, that was, I mean, and that was a great experience because I suppose it was just the first experience of doing a film like in 2 days or something, it's crazy amount of time. But it was, I had treasure working with who had such experience and were able to sometimes go like, oh, we want to go to this location and then we need to go to the location. They're like, do it both here. Believe me, you're going to be happy. And finally on the day, I was like, thank you so much for making us do both of these things here because we would have never made the day. So you rely on people and through going through experience, I think you learn and I did sort of think the next time I was like, I probably need this to make, I always had Showkids on the back burner. I'd started working like the idea in 2015, so I always had the kind of idea written down, but it was only really once I got that finished and I was like, what do I want to really do, myself? And I was like, I'll try and get Showkids made. So that was kind of the journey, since.
It is a longer form type of storytelling and coming on then as a director. So, you have the text. I'm just wondering, it's a very different thing to creating your own thing from scratch. And I'm just like almost like a compare and contrast then, so that when we get into Showkids, like what was sort of different about it and what are the kind of pros and cons?
Well, you mean a feature versus I don't really, there's not really pros and cons. I suppose it's just it's the same process really. Do you know what I mean? It's just that I suppose with TV, you're writing in a very different way because, you want the show to feel, like you want to keep the story going and you can't make it feel finished at the end of episode 1. It needs to kind of keep going, obviously. And that's something we were learning ourselves. So with the feature, it's closed. So there's not that kind of challenge, so it's sort of a different challenge in terms of the arc of the characters and getting it to work beginning to end and having the shots. I was very I'd worked really carefully on the shots for Metal Heart. Like I pretty much storyboarded everything, but with Owen McLaughlin, the DP, kind of worked on together, but had a really good plan. So funny enough in Showkids, and I didn't have as much storyboarded. Like I storyboarded quite a bit of it, but more the stuff that we needed, Showkids that we needed to kind of plan in advance because there was quite a lot of visual effects. So
even in terms of texts, that the Metal Heart is sort of closed, but it is sort of very much so, like mostly sort of plot driven, even in terms of character development. Yeah. And then something like Showkids is very character. Yeah. Like everything is sort of based on these personalities.
That's right. I suppose that's probably true in TV, isn't it? You kind of want the characters to lead the story more. And I suppose coming from, because it's sort of based on me. Let's face it, the kid Sam and Showkids, that was very easy for me to kind of, I had a lot of stories that I could draw on, and funny enough, Shane and Amy, they've worked a lot in children's animation, and Nick Murphy, our executive producer who I first went to for this, who made Moon Boy because of Dad, he's got such a wealth of experience, and they'd worked together before, even though I had suggested Shane and Amy didn't realize they even knew each other. So it was such a great team because Nick had this incredible brain. He could always come in and there's a joke in episode 1 of Showkids where Chloe, the kid with the kind of one of the star kids, comes in late and then is put in the punishment box, the mime box that she used to kind of close herself, and that was Nick's idea. And he just has this crazy kind of visual, funny ideas. Do you know what I mean? And that was just out of the box. And we had some kind of punishment thing going on, but he was like, what about she just like mimes getting in a punch? I was like, of course. And that's what I always remember that now as being one of my funniest jokes, the funniest jokes in the show. But so I don't know.
All your cast. Okay, so we'll move on.
Sorry,
to but it's really no, because we'll get onto it because this is the meat. It's like we've had like all of our courses, and we'll get onto this. Okay, so tell me about how Shane and working with it. So you had versions of scripts maybe that you had done yourself up until recently. When did Shane and Amy?
I had written the pilot and I wrote a Bible. So I had a kind of pilot and the Bible ready to go by like 2000, I think about like 18, something like that. I kind of finally worked hard in it myself and got some advice from my friends and different people read it. And so eventually, I think that's when I reached out to Nick Murphy and I was like, Nick, would you be involved? And he's in LA. when you do a Zoom with him, he has his like international Emmys behind him. So you're like, I disagree with that idea. You're not. It's hard to say that sometimes, but he's so open. No, he's brilliant. And so he had suggested Deadpan. He had worked with them on Moon Boy, so had a meeting with them, kind of I think 2019, and then. I wanted to work with other writers. I didn't want to write it all myself. I didn't have the experience, and also, I think with the show that has a lot of characters, it was good to have other voices, writers who could make other voices and make not all the kids sound the same and all the adults.
And such strong comedic and character. You see, I'm such a like old school Diet of Worms. I used to follow them probably in like 2005. Yeah. So I'd been following them since then because I knew Amy. I went to college with Amy, so I was just in awe of their work. I'd seen all their plays, their sketch comedy and stuff. So and then kind of been following their careers from Dublin Stories to
the Walshes,
the Walshes, and the Taste of Home, the Denny one before that.
Yeah, of course.
And then like even when they're now doing kind of their separate careers and so strong and like, oh my God, like Philippa in Eight Body Problems, you're just like, this is hilarious, do you know?
Yes.
Like she's kind of like that kind of old school people pleasing Irish best friend character, but in this like, what is it, like millions and millions and millions of budget per episode series.
Completely. And Amandaland, like she was just going on to do that after us,
so
and she's she was like getting stratospherically famous as we were shooting. It was amazing. But yeah, so and actually, I had known Shane and Amy and loved the Diet of Worms too, and so I'd worked with Shane and Amy on a couple of things that, like even like a test commercial that we did, and I'd worked on something with them that I was going to direct, and Mike Donnelly, this fantastic producer who we all love, was working on that too. So we kind of all got together and it just worked. So they they came in and wrote then every episode with me. So kind of like we've shared the credit in all six. Like I was the creator of the show, but it's the team of us together really, and Nick as well. So we had just had this great brain group, and because it sort of took a while to get finally there and shooting, which is true for everyone. We're so lucky we even got to do it through RTE Junior. That's how it kind of happened. So we had time to work on the scripts, to really work on them basically.
To work, and again, even the rest of your cast are some of the strongest comedians working in Ireland. I mean, I'd like, it's funny, I'd probably know Killian
Sundermann,
who plays the father, and he is from Instagram, and he plays these kind of like very awkward, very funny characters, but he kind of brings a real heart and depth that I hadn't seen.
He really does.
It's lovely and a warmth.
Yeah, he's so funny and warm and like really good at improv. I suppose it was one thing I really wanted was like, we always talked about, and it was Nick's note, Nick Murphy, when they had done Moon Boy, he was saying, you're not going to have the kids all day because you can't shoot with kids all day because they get really tired. And that's correct. They shouldn't be working all the time. So you need to have good adult characters that can kind of take some of the weight off their shoulders. So we did have scenes with the parents, and it kind of makes sense because if you remember in Moon Boy, the parents are really funny, Peter McDonald and Deirdre Kane, and they had really good characters themselves and you cared about them. And so, and it's true in the drama world, the parents of the drama kids are as much characters, when you meet the real drama parents, as the kids. So, our rule in the story was the parents have to be sillier than the kids. So they have to be, in some way talking about the kids, or, it can't be about something else to do with them when we're cutting away to them. But they have to be silly or visual or something that keeps the kids' interest as well. And so that kind of then naturally meant that I was thinking, comedians as well are so confident coming in for a day or two on a shoot, because it's hard for any actor to come in on something just for a couple of days. You're so important, even just a day, for a scene, you're so important to the shoot, but you can get a bit nervous basically. And I think comedians have this great inner strength because they have to go out and do it themselves, and they're basing it a bit on their own lives. So they're kind of, and not to say they don't get nervous, and everybody does when you're shooting, but they have a natural kind of confidence. And I don't know, it was really, so that I thought Peter McGann as well, so just getting the funniest people was so lucky to us.
and I would say this, right, because a lot of, like, I would say Peter, Killian,
and Philippa and all the worms.
Philippa, yeah. But I mean, Philippa is an actor.
Yeah.
I would say first now.
Yes.
Like she kind of plays, but she has played very similar roles, and there's a kind of softness to this that, but like it's slightly different,
It
right?
is,
So it's
it
slightly
is.
different to what she would have done in different spaces. But again, like Killian, someone who's, that sketch comedy person, that Instagram person, and Peter,
Yeah.
that would be sort of well known.
Yeah.
And what's very interesting is, like, as someone who's watching from the outside, it feels very much so almost written for them when you're watching it. But they were cast with these characters that you'd had in mind from 2018, which is really, really interesting.
Well, we did sort of adapt the characters to the, to the characters as well, and we improv quite a bit, and so definitely in the scenes, like Killian and Philippa were improvising quite a lot, in terms of the lines, and so were the kids. Like they were like by the end, Flynn was just coming in with new lines that some of them were just hilarious that are in the show. You know what I mean? We got all of them to see. I suppose what's the great thing about improv, it's the misnomer is that you're just coming up with dialogue on the fly, which I suppose you are, but it's more that you've kind of practiced it in rehearsal and it sounds funny. And but what you're saying to them is like, say it in your way. And obviously Philippa and Killian would come to me beforehand, because I'd said to them, look, change whatever you want, and you need to be talking to each other in whatever way feels natural, because you're family and people don't talk in sentences like normal people, like in shows. So it just it frees them up. So even if they are just end up saying the dialogue, which we'd worked really hard on, we were proud of it. So we weren't, anything that was better was going to be even better. But I suppose what it means is that when you tell the actors that they can kind of feel like they can improv, they relax a bit, because I think they're not so worried about just hitting their lines, and because it can be very tense. As soon as you have a camera in front of you, you can freeze up. It's just an unnatural thing. Action, everybody's doing it. It's scary. So the more you can relax the actor into feeling like it's fun, they might come up with something funny. And which they did a lot on camera, that sort of makes everybody a little less self-conscious. And that's probably where the best work comes from, because when you're relaxed, the audience relaxes. Kids, they want to have fun, and they're good at playing. Like the whole point of the show is that, kids, when we grow up, we lose that sense of play, and kids can do it. So,
but what's interesting is it's very much from their point of view. But before we kind of move, because I really want to dig into that cast as well, because there's such a talented bunch of young. I do want to so Amy de Bhrún is just such a strong character in this.
Yes.
Like she's someone who I've seen mostly in crime.
Yeah.
But, she's a wonderful arc, and she's a kind of brilliant charm to her. So obviously she's kind of loosely based on a real person. I'm just saying.
I did. I went to drama class that had a kind of but there's a few kind of interesting big character teachers who were in Ireland that we have, and in the UK. Funnily enough, there was kind of one kind of really looked at in London as well. But I went to one in particular. But and funny enough, a composite. But Amy had gone to the same one as me. Funny enough, and some of her family had as well. So we kind of knew that world really well. And you love her, but she's terrifying, so that's kind of what we wanted. And I talked about whiplash with Amy, like I love the character of the teacher and that, who's terrifying. And I think it was said to Amy, you can smile once in every episode, if you want to, but that's as much as we get out of you, because you're too scary. And the kids were genuinely a bit scared of her in character, do you know what I mean? Because she was scary, and she would say stuff in the improv stuff that we did that you get genuine reactions, which is just brilliant. So and it was hard. Obviously the reality is that often the kids aren't there for Amy shots, so she had an even harder job to do. But some of the younger ones anyway, we had to kind of keep offset as much as possible, but she was there, obviously had already seen it. So anyway, yeah.
But so the young cast now, they're so talented. I think Flynn, just the depth of his character, and I'm presumingly it's the unspoken. He is ADHD, and this is him finding his route.
Well, I suppose maybe not ADHD, but it's probably a good way of putting it, actually. I suppose because I don't particularly think I've got ADHD, but I am definitely.
You should probably get tested.
I should probably good.
It is cutty. It's inattentive type ADHD.
Okay, well then now you just diagnosed me. But I suppose
we're not the first. What is it? The first symptom of ADHD when you're diagnosed is diagnosing everyone else.
Well, no, definitely. It's funny because I'd worked on a without joking about it in any way, but like I did a short based on a teenager with autism called Corduroy in 2010, and I worked with a group with kids with autism for quite a while. And obviously the phrasing of it has changed now in terms of we were talking about Asperger's at the time, and it's more just on the spectrum now. And I feel like everybody creative is slightly on the spectrum. So I think I'm definitely there in some way. So it's it's not so I suppose that's where it comes from in terms of the imagination stuff and being a bit kind of I would sort of disappear into my own head or imagine stuff that's going to be better. And we kind of, the rule with our, with our script editor and stuff, we were sort of saying, Sam definitely makes stuff better in his head than it actually is. So that's the problem, you know what I mean? Because then he's back in real life and it's not so good. So we wanted kind of in the class that when they imagine stuff together, they kind of help each other to sort of work it out, so kind of using drama which we did, in the class. Our teacher would let us improvise, and as in the show, and then you did get to just basically improvise. You improvised a show, and I did it with the kids. We did it a few times for real in rehearsals, and they really got into it. And I've done it in classes in Bow Street and the Factory. I've worked with sort of acting groups and done the improv thing where I've shown them like the Upright Citizens Brigade. There's a very funny thing on YouTube where they do like a long form improv. It's like Amy Poehler and Tina Fey, and Tina Fey comes out in front of the group and just asks the audience for a word, and then she says something that makes her think of that word, what she thinks of, some situations she thinks of, and then they start acting them out. And I show it to the group. I'm like, you're going to do this in like 5 minutes, and they're like, no way. And then they're doing it 5 minutes later, and they're loving it. Do you know what I mean? So we're naturally able to do it, actors anyway, or anyone really as a group. It's just you unlock those things, and everybody's creating these mad stories. So yeah.
And I do want to say, like, I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying,
make that clear.
As someone who's like, I'm not. That is a joke. But it is something that I think there's a lot of really positive representation. Yeah. I would have interpreted that myself.
Well, that's really interesting.
A kind of visual. Yeah. Like a very visual, like right down to the causing accidents because you're not paying attention.
No, you're
elements
right. It
to
is.
ADHD,
I mean, it is a
that. Yeah. But it's very warmly and told from his perspective, which I thought was really, really lovely. But I mean, again, like, that's all art. Like, we all project our own experiences and lived experiences onto it. But yeah, that form of representation, that form of different lived experiences, how no one is a cliche, how, again, I think you have a lovely, sensitive young actor. Oh, I want to get his name. The kind of, he plays like almost like the kind of cliched bully character.
Callum Turner. Yeah, he's great as Oscar. Yeah.
And then to turn it
so
around
natural,
and just be like, this is somebody's like difficult lived experience, and here's empathy back onto them, because it is really told from these talented young people's like personal experience. And I think what it captures really beautifully is how, like, at that point in your life, you don't necessarily feel like you're trying to be an adult. You don't necessarily feel like you have control over the world. You're still trying to figure everything out, and it's kind of, everyone is treated with such empathy.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we wanted. And even Amy as Miss Jessop, in that episode, she's amazing, I think, and she sort of gets them to kind of have that connection, and it's really moving for me, so yeah, it can get there, I think, in terms of the emotion with the kids, especially. I mean, they're so raw and real themselves that it's very, it's very moving.
And Niamh Moriarty is a star.
Such a star.
Herself and Flynn, there's just such vulnerability and chemistry and depth in both of them together, in their own arcs.
Yes.
Like, talk to me about, again, directing young actors. What would be some, like how do you get them to come out of themselves? Is it that you yourself, this is your lived experience, what it's like?
Well, that helps, and definitely the fact that they knew that I was, that it was kind of based on my own kind of life. It was definitely easier for them to talk to me about it. And being an actor, yourself, you've got a little bit more kind of communication in some way. I don't know how, but you kind of do. But someone like Flynn and Niamh, you just have to cast them because they're so brilliant that I don't think I ever had to maybe come to a couple times like, Flynn, we really need this. This time you're going to have to do this, we need this. And he'd be like, yep, got it. He got everything. Yeah. Like, and Niamh, you don't have to, she would ask you would go, well, you're amazing if you want to do this or this. But, so obviously some of the other kids, they got, they had a little less experience. That was why we loved them. So it was a lovely to have a mix between, kids who are clearly not acting much. They're just themselves and they're really funny, or they've got their own personality. And I think everyone as an audience knows that. And then you can sort of see the kids who are like, they've got some serious chops here. These are amazing kids. So it was lovely to kind of populate the different group. It felt like, we just wanted to get the right kids and then work the characters around them rather than cast them in this part that they had to be, that wouldn't have been right. So that, and the same with the adults really as well, because we'd sort of then get them to shape it and what their experience was like, and then they'd be able to kind of improv off that sometimes. And we did rehearse a bit, which is great. So we were able to kind of, they were a little bit more confident by the time they got to set that they kind of knew each other pretty well.
And for something so strong and like hitting all the beats, so there's the overarching character arcs, you're on side with each character, you see their vulnerability, like even the people that are pitched as bad guys, you're there's like a rich, nuanced built world. But then capturing that, I presume young people's budgets are smaller than big people's budgets in terms of, because young people don't have money to spend on advertising. Exactly. That's unfortunately the truth. So we really had to pull this together. And I mean, the reality is actually my friend John Butler had just been shooting the Stephen Merchant show, The Outlaws, in England, and he read some of the scripts and he's like, "You're going to need 2 cameras." And I was like, "I think you're right." So we didn't even have a budget for a proper DP. Well, of course, we did have a great DP, but we ended up getting a really great, DP, Rua Megan, who I'd worked with a lot and has shot a lot of stuff himself. What probably hadn't thought he was stepping up as a DP on TV, but then Esme came in as his kind of second camera, and she was just as important, and so we had this amazing group of 2 cameras who then were just maybe made it we could shoot the scenes, because I think when you've got like 6, 7 kids and adults in a scene, it's obviously covering that in a fun, not stressful way is and it didn't need that kind of look, it didn't need to be a super dolly and pan, and knowing it was much more about getting the performances and the energy of the scenes. And we'd plan shots, and we did do our shots, but but it's really fast paced. Exactly. There's a lot of different locations, there's a lot of different things, there's a lot of set pieces, there's like a wheelchair race, there's like like at a seagull physical fight, a choreographed fight, like there's shows and performances, and we go to everyone's individual home. Like I think Tanya and the we see in it her relationship with Peter's character and that intimacy. So there's there's a lot. Like I mean, beat per beat, the whole thing moves so quickly. Oh, that's great to hear. And I can imagine that was difficult. No, it was. I mean, I suppose, and it did help. Having the 2 cameras really did help, because you're able to, without it ever feeling, hopefully, like a 2 camera thing, it's more that you were just able to keep the pace going, because sometimes, and you really notice it on when you're watching more than one camera stuff. Again, you can kind of see that obviously the editing demands the pace, and when you have the access to a little bit more footage, you can just play with the pace a bit more. You can have that energy a little bit more when sometimes you're stuck with what you've got, which you still we are. We had to shoot some of it with one camera for various reasons, but no, it was a real experience for me. I'd done a short with the Young Irish Filmmakers in Kilkenny a few years ago, which is such a fun experience, where I ended up playing like myself coming to make a short with them, but I'm a total dick. And we shoot. I love that. It's very extras energy. It really was. It really is. And it was not a million miles away from this, because it was the same kind of young kids, and we did cast the kids who were the filmmakers, but we worked with the filmmakers as well making it, and we shot on 2 cameras, and they shot. But that was a really good experience for me as well, just because I had worked with 2 cameras with kids, and I was like, okay, this does work. It helps us a lot. We can get them in and out. They don't want to get tired, and our first AD, Craig Kenny, had made a lot of stuff with kids in the North and in England, and he was so good with them. And like, just the Jenga you need to do with the scheduling is not fun for anybody. But you forget about that when it's made, though. You're like, we can do it again. No, it is. Now it's like that. And then in terms of editing, and in terms of editing with 2 cameras, does that give you more scope for nice reaction shots and it does. Bits and bobs as well? But does it? I presume it takes more time. Well, I mean, it sort of takes. I think it sort of ends up taking the same time as a normal shoot, but you get more. You get more footage basically, and I think you can run it, especially with improv stuff. It was great because we weren't necessarily shooting, both ways. So we were. But there was times when we did get to improv on 2 cameras, so that's covering that in a really fun way. But also it was probably more just getting through the footage, because you've got 6 kids and you've got to get all the reactions on their lines. If you can have a camera on each kid for those 2 shots, then you're kind of having the time. So that's great, and that's that. You can see why Ridley Scott shoots with 8 cameras. You're like, he's got every scene in one take. Like, you just move on. He's sort of like, why wouldn't you shoot with 8 cameras? Now, there's arguments where you can say that it can end up just looking really choppy, and we didn't want it to feel ever like it's, as I'm saying. But it was definitely a resource that was helpful. as a director, like, okay, so from going to shooting sort of like a contained story, very plot driven, that you have to get these beats, to something that again is probably more, oh my God, it's a complete ensemble cast where, you've your A, B, and C story per episode
Yes.
that has to kind of cut together in the overarching thing. Was it like, as your first time doing that, was it tough, or were you like, nah, I could not breathe?
Well, it was, do you know what was great? Having the team around us, like someone like Craig was again brilliant because he'd worked a lot on TV, and his big now, I'd done a pilot already for RTE that was really good and fun with Craig. And the big thing we learned from that was make sure your script, if your episode is 24 minutes, make your script be about 24 pages, because you would tendency to have a 32 page script and it all gets cut because you're not going to be able to do it, and you end up wasting 7 or 8 pages of work, which is possibly days and days that you're throwing away. Instead of, we shot with 24 page scripts. It was so tight because we'd so little money and time that, we were so forensic about what we could have. And it pretty much, we were never, maybe a couple of times we were like, we can add a shot because we're a little under, but that was the only, it was never a bad thing. And it was only, you can always cut it a little bit tighter anyway. So it just felt that we didn't waste a lot of stuff, which was a big good thing in terms of how we made our days.
And what, like, and I presume there was an element of baptism by fire because it's such a bigger project.
Yeah.
What would be your biggest takeaways that you've learned as a director, sort of coming off it?
I mean, I suppose I learned so much. I can't even put it into words, really. I mean, it just was, it definitely was. I mean, it's funny. I shot second unit on a Netflix series about Moses in Morocco for 3 months in 2023 with my great friend Ben, who was directing that. And so that was epic. And that was 3 months of directing it, been in French as well. Like, I was on Duolingo a lot. And you're like, we actually need the kind of entire army to go left. And then you just wait as they move. And it's incredible, and that was such a great experience. And for some reason that kind of
prepared you.
It's sort of, because I was working on this and we kind of hoped it might happen. So coming back to this was like, we weren't shooting the Red Sea parts, with Moses and all these, it was mad, that experience. And so I suppose in a way it was really ambitious, but it was more contained. So, and everyone's speaking English, so that was helpful. But anyway, so that I suppose that's
so already you have a bigger baptism of fire ahead of your baptism of fire. Yeah. And then, so then when it's fully on your shoulders, you were like, not a bother.
Because it's funny, second unit stuff is really kind of, you learn a lot from it too, because you're in the way sometimes and you're making noise when they're shooting. So you're definitely the lower, the little brother, but you get a chance to kind of just with a little less stress as well with a big crew, which is great, because you sometimes don't have as much to do in the day. And there were days when we were working as hard, as the first crew. And there was times when they got like waterlogged out of these mountains where we just were the only ones shooting for a couple of days, So it really was much bigger than I was expecting and doing proper scenes. And Ben was really good to let me do that. It was just such a big project that it worked out that way, and they trusted me, which is brilliant, and the actors, because you end up working with all the main actors and you're like, I'm the second unit guy, that you have a right to be really rude to me, but I've done it a few times. And anyway, just gives you a lot of experience on something bigger, that you're not as panicked when you've got the scary group of kids and we've got 10 minutes and we've got to do this and the set isn't ready, and you're like, you're like, it's fine, we'll get there.
God, that's so exciting. Is there a season 2 in the works?
We're talking to RTE about it. They we got really good numbers, which is brilliant, and so we're talking to them. Yeah. We hope it'll work out because there's various things to be managed and money stuff. But we would love to do it, and they've seemed to be supportive. So fingers crossed.
I really hope so.
Thank
because
you.
I think these are such beautiful characters, they're well developed. I really am excited to follow them. And I know we mentioned like Motherland and like those sort of shows, but I really think it even sits in perfectly to the that type of comedy where it works across like all 3 levels of like character, story, emotional, and it's just really, really funny.
It's really funny.
So
that's brilliant to hear. Well, it's funny because Flynn, the main who plays Sam, over the summer, myself and Mike had started getting inklings because they were asking for some scenes and stuff from his mum was, and he's been cast in Star Wars and he's filming right now opposite Ryan Gosling. So, but funny enough, in season 2, we were talking about what that would be, and way back, Sam was going to get a part in the big thing, and we can't, we're changing about we're talking about how we would actually feasibly do it. It's incredible that it's just, but it's not incredible because Flynn is amazing, but it's as I said before, it's like, I don't know if it's life imitating art or the other way around, but it's incredible for him. So his life is changed, and it's, yeah, it's mad. It's what would rightly happen to Sam. I like it,
Oh, you can work in. You can try and get like you can ask him to ask someone to do a cameo, and then do like an extras style parody, like where someone is an absolute prick or a psychopath, or you can't really do a pervert if it's kids one, but like anything like that, it would be so funny.
Oh my God. I mean, the possibilities are endless. Yeah. So we'll see, but it's exciting, but we're so excited for him, and it's brilliant, Yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah. But it is such a good show. I can't recommend it more. A huge congratulations. And yeah, like I'm angling for a season 2, so I'll be there watching it anyway. Well, thanks so much for chatting with us.
Thanks so much, Gemma.
And thank you so much for listening. So Showkids is available to watch back on the RTE player, and make sure to rate and subscribe to Film Ireland wherever you get your podcasts.